right. Well, welcome to the first and inaugural episode of the FAM podcast. I'm Dr. Ryan Dunlop, hailing from Fresno, California, and I'm extremely excited to start this podcast series. Over the next few weeks to months, we're going to have a series of doctors, industry leaders coming onto the podcast to discuss various topics in full arch and digital dentistry. A little bit about Full Arch Masters. We're a collaborative group of full arch enthusiasts around the country and around the world, sharing in one simple vision to provide high quality full arch implant dental care to as many deserving patients as possible while working in a collaborative environment. So I'm really excited to welcome our first guest onto the FAM podcast. He's a good friend of mine. Dr. Jeff Buske, hailing from Granbury, Texas. Invited Jeff to come on the podcast today to discuss a variety of topics. But Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself and we'll just dive right in.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Ryan. And man, I feel so honored to be the first guest on the FAM podcast. Woo, that's pretty exciting.
I can't think of a better guy.
I am super excited. Today's going to be awesome too. So I've been Jeff Buske. I live, like Ryan said, in Granbury, Texas, which is a little bit west and south of Fort Worth. And, you know, I've had the unique opportunity to be practicing dentistry now for 25 years. And gosh, I think I met Ryan. It's almost been maybe at least 2.5, maybe close to maybe 3 years ago now. And
it was our last course right before COVID.
Yeah. So, you know, and it was pretty awesome because, you know, Ryan is just such an innovator. And for me, I've been doing implant dentistry since, 2000. And to come in and just watch my mind get blown on what all Ryan had put together at that point was just absolutely amazing. I mean, he has really taken on, and I mean, he's just a workhorse from the perspective of just having to figure out how all these things integrate, work well together. And let me tell you, it has been so fantastic for me in my practice to have that opportunity to go and learn from Ryan, come home, and then be able to take all the equipment, put things together, and have it to where it actually communicates and talks.
Right.
For me to have tried to figure that out on my own would have been just like, it would have still been in a box. Let's just put it that way. You know, it would not have been happening. I would have still been doing torturous denture conversions and just, you know, wanting to pull my hair out because that is the bane of existence as you're doing full arches. You're just
right.
I love full arch, but I hate doing conversions. And you just felt like, you know, I'm kind of a glorified lab technician in the afternoons when you're doing your conversions. And it was just rather painful. So, you know, Ryan, thanks for putting everything together. And I really do. I want to acknowledge that's not an easy task, you know, to take and try to figure all those things out. You've got to test so many different things, so many different concepts. Also, so many different vendors and looking at vetting things. And, you know, it's a lot. And so, I just want to acknowledge that. And my hat's off to you because what you've put together is really just not only an A+ program, but it's very exceptional. So I just want to say kudos to you, brother. It's really, really remarkable. And it's going to hopefully tie into some of the things that we're talking about today because, Ryan, I think also the other really incredibly amazing thing that, you know, individuals will touch on that is part of the FAM community, and that is the powerful aspect of community.
Right.
And that is something that is missing, I think, in dentistry that really is really powerful, that if we acknowledge that and bring that into play in more areas, it really allows us to extrapolate information from other individuals, and it really allows us to draw on the collective genius of others because the power of community moves things through at lightning speed. And that's one of the things that I've witnessed just being a part of the FAM and the FAM community on the thread and not necessarily even always replying to things, but just reading through there. And it's just so powerful. So thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
I often say that dentists find themselves on an island and they can feel alone and they can feel trapped and they can feel distant from their community. And I would say that I felt that way for many years, developing my skill set, my practice. And so Full Arch Masters is kind of the embodiment of my quest to shed down those walls and open up the lines of communication between like-minded individuals like you and me. So I appreciate that, and that is definitely a backbone of what we do at Full Arch Masters, is try to create a community of like-minded professionals to help each other, and I have always said that the rising tide rises all ships, and so I appreciate those kind words. But tell me why I wanted you to be our first guest. What do you have going on that is so special?
Yeah, so thanks. We've got an event coming up here this November 11, 12, and 13 in Miami. And it's called Be the Man Conference. And it's specifically designed for male dentists. And really the cool aspect of it is really this, the whole key component. And I'll share with you a little bit about my story and how it came about. But kind of envision it like this. So imagine having the opportunity to really live kind of on the leading edge and having the ability to have it all, in your faith and in your fitness and in your family and your finance. So when you can take those 4 domains and you have the ability to couple all that and work with that to where that is synergistically flowing in harmony, is very, very powerful. Mm-hmm. So what that looks like is kind of like, imagine having your body that is fit and healthy and weaponized, having, intimate connection with your spouse and being able to have amazing connected sex, having full presence and connection with your kids, and having your ability to be spiritually on point and on purpose. And while also then coordinating and having the ability to have your practice be one that grows year after year, and getting out of the scarcity mindset. Mm-hmm. And what I've witnessed is for myself, I think a lot of dentists do have a scarcity mindset. And what I've also witnessed for myself is, if I don't have those 4 areas connected and working in harmony, then it automatically pulls me into scarcity, because that means that I've got like a flat tire in one of those areas, and mm-hmm. it just slows me down going down the highway. Now, we got to look at meeting somebody where they are. There's somebody that does have a flat tire, and then there's other people that their car's kind of jacked up on blocks and needs, a little bit more support, but our target is just to get you humming down the Autobahn so you can really cruise through life and have a lot more fun and a lot more joy. Because where I was at before, I wasn't having that fun and that joy. And so when we can connect those things, it is, like I said, is powerful. And that's what I really call that. When you take and create that every day, you're creating power. And power is one of those words that can be, a trigger for some individuals or not. But I'll have you consider just today, consider when we talk about power, it's really it's really increasing the capacity to do. And that's the way that I want you to really kind of envision power today as we discuss anything else here. But no, our conference is going to be going on there in November. Super excited. I'm going to also give the listeners and the fam people a nice little special treat and a little bonus today too, as far as from our initial conversation here. But no, that's kind of where that's at, and that's what's coming about. I'm super excited about it and can't wait to dive in further, Ryan.
So I think that's a great idea. I think that a lot of professionals, myself included, we struggle with the work-life balance. I think that this type of dentistry in particular, whether you're a surgeon or a prosthetic dentist or both, it can be very draining on you mentally. It can be very draining on you emotionally. It can be very draining on you physically. And I think it is very hard to maintain proper balance between your personal life, your professional life, your spiritual life, your marital life, your family life, just your psychological life. That's something that I think all of us work on. What in your life led you down this path to helping others attain balance in this?
Yeah. So, environment? If I jump back to like 2016 and really kind of reflect back to that time, I really wasn't in the greatest place. And you're right. I really do feel like a lot of implant doctors are just, kind of in general geared to be a lot more hard charging type of individuals.
Right.
And, for me, that's just kind of the way that I've been. And at that time in 2016, man, I had 2 practices going. The second practice that I had, it was a startup practice. It was 52 miles away. And I was really looking at having a lot more time that I had to manage that, to build that, to try to create the culture there. Oftentimes it felt like I was playing doctor daycare, and it was very, very frustrating. And for me, I didn't necessarily have the best tools. I've never been taught. I've never been trained. I've never been educated on having great tools to manage that stress. And so I don't know about for you, but at least in my experience, one of the things that I've realized is that the people who love us the most often get the worst aspect of us. So I would be amazing all day with my patients and give them my all and show up incredibly well for them. Right. And then come home, and then my patients got the greatest part, and then my family gets the hardest part. So they get the hardest part where all the stress gets dumped.
And then you kind of unload that tension at the end of the day.
Absolutely. They get the brunt of all that. They get the brunt of the frustration, the difficulties, the management, the stress. I didn't have any ability to have tools to help, kind of level that out, so to speak. And I didn't also have a community to share that with, and just like you said, very much so, very poignantly at the beginning of the podcast, I felt very alone. I would look, and I think you look on social media, and it's very easy to, you look on there and everybody's living their best life, and you play the, you play the comparison game, and you're like, right. Man, why can't I be the guy to figure this same shit out? And right. And you start to really doubt yourself, and you're like, man, what's wrong with me? Right. And the reality is that we all have stuff going on. That's the truth of the matter. I mean, there's no perfect, no perfect marriage, no perfect children. All of that is stuff that we've got to have the opportunity to walk through and unpack those puzzles. And I just didn't have the capacity at that time to do that. And so the worse it got, the worse that I dealt with it. And that started off with me drinking heavily every day. Then I would have that with my wife, and then we would fight and we would argue. I would end up having issues with our kids. They were more of a distraction to me, trying to pull. I looked at them like they were pulling me away from the work that I needed to do to grow the business. And that's a hard thing to say. I mean, because that's not very good. When you look at it and you're like, I'm looking at my kids like they're a distraction, but that's the truth. And that's the truth of where I was at. And it finally, obviously when I was drinking every day, I did not feel like getting up and working out. I was choosing sedation just to try to calm myself every night. And all those things become more and more detrimental. Right. I had no spiritual connection. I certainly didn't want to get up every morning and work out because I felt crappy from the night before. And it was just enough for me to get in and pull off the day, in the office. And so it finally came to a head one night when my wife and I had just enough to drink where we were finally saying what was on our minds, and in a good argument. And floodgates were open. But, I'll never forget, because her words stopped me in my tracks. And she said, Jeff, I didn't sign up for this shit. She said, the kids and I walk around here every day on eggshells. And I didn't have a response. I literally laid there in bed the rest of that night and just thought, okay, I need to change. And so, that was the crux of finding that change. So I did. The one good thing about me is I take action pretty quickly on things that are real important, and I implement. So I went and found coaches and mentors, and then I took things that were being told to me and taught to me, and I put them into play immediately in my life and started to shift things. Right. And I noticed things started to shift and change dramatically, and I realized, man, it's more about I'm just not defining myself as a dentist. I'm way more than a dentist. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a dentist. I do dentisting, and then, but I'm also a lot more. I've got friends. And then, also in reality, I think there's also kind of this identity crisis. We think that we're dentists, but the reality is that we're leaders and we're also entrepreneurs. And there's a lot more involved with that when you start to look at that, because there's a lot bigger game being played there. And I was just not leading myself very well. So there was no way, if I'm not leading myself well, there's no way that I can lead others really, really well. So my team suffered for that. My family suffered for that. I suffered for that. And so by integrating little changes and little tweaks, figured out that it's not like super complicated. It's not like the 67 steps to success, right? But it's really looking at how do we integrate these things, these 4 areas into life, and actually have it be true and workable. we've all been exposed to the consultant who comes in and is like, oh yeah, I'll tell you how to do this, and it's the easy work-life balance.
Right.
And to me, that's bullshit. Yeah, just buy my book. And it's total bullshit because they've never, ever once stood in my shoes, nor your shoes, Ryan.
Right. They've
never been the dentist who's been responsible for the overhead. They've never had to have all the tax work out. They've never had to figure out the marketing. They've never had to figure out, anything going on in the office back and forth between team members not getting along. They've never had to figure out how to balance all that shit.
Right.
And so for them to sit there and try to tell you that it's possible, it's totally out of integrity. And that's one of the things that I realized. And that's what I love about what I get to do and what I get to coach on is I've been there. I've been in the very bottom of the pit and have found my way out.
Right.
And in a great way. And then we can teach that in a way that's very dynamic and a lot of fun to learn. I guess that would be the fifth F. We've got faith, fitness, family, finance, but we also have to incorporate fun. And fun is a big part of what we do.
And Full Arch Masters, that's the sixth one.
Yeah, and Full Arch, success right there, man.
So attendees that go to this conference, what do they expect to see and experience and learn there?
Awesome. So we will do a deep dive into each one of those domains. So it's really broken up over 3 days. So we've got Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sunday, we finish by 1. But we will be focusing heavily on 2 of those domains on Friday and another 2 on Saturday. And our conference is not like your typical CE where you're sitting in a conference hall all day, maybe taking some notes and things like that. We will be inside for some of it, but a lot of our training is evolutionary. So what that means is we'll be outside, we'll be interacting, we'll be out doing things on the beach. For example, we might be playing some flag football, some beach volleyball. When we're talking about the fitness aspect of it, we've got a lot of different things, activities planned when we start talking about, the faith component. Your faith doesn't necessarily have to be religious. It can be for you, but it's really a spiritual purpose that's bigger than oneself. And I look at, from that perspective, I kind of look at how all that ties together is, listen, my business, my practice, that has to fund my vision in life.
Right.
And so when I look at that and when it starts to fund my vision, we can start to see how purpose then becomes a big part of how that's intertwined with everything. And so we really start to look at connecting these dots over the course of the weekend and really starting to free up that space. And then we talk a lot about family and how that becomes so important. Remember how I said, like, my family was something that I was resistant to, like they were stealing time from me. That's what I felt like it was pulling time away from the business before. Now, 180 degrees. My family is absolutely my superpower that gives me the opportunity to go in and just absolutely kick ass in the office, show up as a leader, show up very powerfully. Because I can tell you this, if I get up in the morning, my wife and I fight or we argue, I'm going to go into work that day and I'm going to suck. I'm not going to be 100% on board. I'll still be able to pull it off. Don't get me wrong, but I am going to suck in comparison to what I could give individuals as far as how I show up emotionally, how I show up in person for them, and the energy. Totally different dynamic.
Well, you're not going to enjoy it. I mean, we're in a privileged position. We get to do amazing, life-changing dentistry on a daily basis. But if you're not in tuned and enjoying yourself on the other sides of your life, it's very hard to come into that environment and genuinely enjoy providing those transformations for people if you're not settled yourself.
And you said something very, very key that I want to make sure that people get. You said that we get to come in and do that.
It's a privilege. It really is.
It's a
privilege.
Absolute privilege. And that's so important. Not that we have to,
right.
And it's that we get to. We get the opportunity to totally change and shape people's lives, to allow them to reinsert themselves back into society. And you talk about some of the most amazing emotional paychecks that you can get is from doing what we get to have the opportunity to do. And that's what's so beautiful about it. So the experience of the conference will be tying all of those factors together. And here's kind of the other thing, Ryan, too. Like, I've spent a lot of time, talking to docs and everything. And if I ask them, hey, what's your vision for next year? That question can sometimes be puzzling for people. Like, I haven't really thought of it. And a lot of times I really think it's kind of like looking through, glasses. Like, man, the lenses are kind of dirty. and there's not as much clarity around there. And some of that is just it could be from past stories, past beliefs, and things like that. And so one of the things that we start to do is start to unmask that. Let's look back at some things. And I don't like to dwell a lot in the past, but what I want to do is I want to clear up some things that could be a potential anchor that is weighing you down and that is keep you from flying down the highway or the Autobahn like we were talking about before. If we can take and unmask that, man, you got light speed, and now you show up and you've got clarity. And clarity to me is like the modern man's currency today. And when you can show up and you're clear on this is where I'm going, this is why I'm going, this is who's coming with me, you can take a stand for something, and you're going to move and you're going to bring people with you when you are that clear about where you're going. But when you have uncertainty, it's very destructive.
I agree. Let me ask you this. It's an amazing idea. I think a lot of professionals struggle with this. I do think that it is a universal problem that professionals struggle with work-life balance. Why is this a men's conference? Awesome
question. One of the biggest things for me is that I've coached both men and women and in this concept. And it's been my experience that there is a big aspect and a big trusting aspect. You've got to be able to trust the process. And for me, what I've seen, and this is again back to my personal experience, women are very great and amazing at being able to get real really quickly, and to be able to be very raw and emotional and very vulnerable very quickly, especially if they know what they want to get out of something. Men have a lot harder time. It's almost like you've got to crack them open to get to the goods inside of that. And it's been my experience that men are a lot more guarded when it's a co-ed situation there. And so for me to be transformative, that's why I'm separating this out. It does not mean that I want to hold back this information from women whatsoever, because you're right. I think it's extremely valuable. And we do have other conferences and training set up to where it can be co-ed. But this one is specifically designed for the men. And what my experience has been is that when the men come in, they have the ability to be in a space where they can be vulnerable. They're in that space with other men that are like-minded and wanting to get to the same directions as they are very quickly. And it just creates a conducive environment for that. The second thing is that, when I look at from a perspective of women, and I love my wife. My wife is my queen. She's my ride or die. But here's the thing. With women in dentistry, I cannot authentically begin to understand all of the problems and the puzzles that you face as a woman. I just can't authentically do that. I cannot necessarily put myself in your shoes and walk in those shoes.
Right.
So I really feel like for me, then if I try to do that, I'm not being authentic and I'm out of integrity. Now, when we bring in women later, it's also a lot of times in conjunction with the men. And that is great because now the men have had an opportunity to work on themselves and they're in a better space. And that has been really, really valuable and has worked out well in the past. So to answer your question, it's better to show up for us to start working with the men first. And then later on, we can add these concepts in with the women. Let's just put it this way. The women they get it a little faster and they're a little easier from that perspective. But I have a calling that, from my perspective, I know that how I felt as a man. And I know in today's day and age, it can be kind of more confusing what it is. What does it mean to be a man? How does it mean? What are my masculine responsibilities? And how does manliness tie into that? And how does that fit in today's day and age? And so those are the things that we start to look at.
So what role are you going to play in in this conference? Are you the DJ? Are you the master of ceremonies? Or are you the guy behind the curtain?
No, so I'll be out there right front and stage and center. I'll be out there also training myself, my business partner, Sebastian Lynn. He's an amazing trainer. And so both of us will be involved heavily with the training. We've got coaches that have been with us now for the last several years that will also be there for support, to support the men to get the results that they're wanting to achieve. And that's really kind of how that will all work out. We do have an MC who's going to be supporting, kind of moving the conference along as we go. But myself and Sebastian will be doing the majority of the training there.
Okay. Let me ask you something else. there's different chapters in your life, and you become a dentist and you're right out of school and you're starting your career, and then you build an office, and usually you're building a family at the same time, and then you enter a second phase where you're kind of established and growing your reputation, and your family's growing as well, and then you reach a point where you have a few gray hairs in your beard and a little bit of a belly. Just a couple. And you're transitioning to the latter half of your career, and your children are growing, and you and your wife are aging a little bit. And what is your advice? Just walk me through what you think a young dentist, male or female, doesn't matter, a young dentist trying to establish themselves, trying to grow and establish a practice and a family, then a middle-aged dentist who's got those things and struggling to find balance, and then kind of a latter third career dentist trying to wrap things up and maintain stability and being transitional. What is your advice to those three different groups?
Yeah, great question. I think for younger dentists especially, one of the things that I would really highly consider is enjoy a little of the time when you get out, and then find what it is that you like to do. Some of it may be implants, some of it may be cosmetics, some of it may be orthodontics. There's so many different aspects in dentistry that we can all love and appreciate. And once you do find that, then what I would tell you to do is look at really kind of honing in on those lanes. Mm-hmm. And I looked at it from the perspective of, I've got to be a super doc. Like, I've got to be amazing at everything. And so I took all kinds of different CE under the sun. And I spent so much time and so much money doing that first out of the gate, where I was even putting things on credit cards. It was dumb the way that I was operating in order to get some of my education.
Right.
But
those greedy
what I would tell
providers.
Yeah,
taking all your cash.
And it is, well, you become
excluded. That's
but you become that CE junkie, and it's a real thing,
right. It's a real addiction. I've seen it.
That's the way that I was operating. So my suggestion is really look at carefully dialing into what it is that you really love about dentistry and what are you excited about, and then take those areas and those avenues. The second thing is that if you are married and you are looking at having a family, or you already have a very young family, make sure you take the time to put that into your schedule to be with them.
Right.
Make sure you take the time to create not just date night, but create adventures, and make sure you block out that time, because that's more important than I ever gave any credence to in the past.
Right.
And that's something that if I could go back and tell myself that in the past, my old self from that, or my younger self from that, that's exactly where I would start, is say, look at those things that matter, and also start to set yourself up so your body has an ability to be adaptable to the different strains that it's going to be taking on in dentistry, because dentistry is very hard on the body. Right. Make sure that you can stay physically fit in order to be able to do that. So get yourself set with a great workout routine. Stay fit, be healthy, eat well, take the time to be with family. That's one of the first areas of concentration that I would look on for a younger dentist. The middle-aged dentist there, when I would really start to look at that, because now your practice is starting to grow, it's starting to take off. And if you're keeping, and you've already established that scenario where, hey, I've got my family in order, I'm keeping up with that, I've got my health in order. Now I'm going to start to look at, okay, now I've got to expand on that, and I've got to expand my business. So now you're starting to learn on different things with more on marketing. You're starting to learn different topics. And I would tell you to look at things outside of dentistry. Right. Look at things that are working well in other businesses and how that operates. And make sure that you feel like the road that you're taking in dentistry is actually following your path, and you feel like you are on purpose. Because when you feel like you're on purpose, it's a lot easier to get into the flow of your days. And it's a lot more enjoyable. Right. And take the time to enjoy that. In all aspects, I think you should take, a good 4 to 6 weeks, if you can start to afford that, and take that time out and take it out of the practice and enjoy that. Why? It also makes you a lot more interesting as an individual. So when you're talking with your patients and you've had experiences, it does make you a more interesting individual to talk to. You're not so robotic in right. there. When you can talk about, hey, I went out to Napa and I had this amazing experience. I went to this winery, Trefednan, and we had an awesome time. And you're able to communicate on different levels, and you're able to also find you've got a lot more like-mindedness associated with people because you've got a lot of commonalities. So having those, I call them leading edge experiences where you're just outside of your comfort zone and you're creating new experiences. I would tell you that's where you want to be in that sweet spot when you're in the middle of your career, because you're in a lot of big growth phase there.
Right.
And then when you're winding down, man, do like I'm doing now. Like I'm working 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Probably another year I'll be down to Monday, Tuesday. And I am just loving life right now. I'm getting to do exactly what I want to do. I'm working the hours that I get to want to work.
Right.
And I'm just absolutely enjoying life. And I'm getting to also do what I want to do with, coaching and teaching docs and just having the opportunity to give back to our profession. To me, this has been one of the best professions that I could ever have been involved with my entire life. I broke my front tooth when I was 17 in a hockey accident. Grew up in Minnesota playing hockey, broke my front tooth in half. It was a daytime hockey game. I had a date that night with a girl from another school. It was the first date. And so I had to say to myself, am I going to show up or am I not going to show up? Well, if I don't, I may never ever get another date. Right. So I was, self-conscious. That's what led me into dentistry. Did go on the date. It was a great date, but it was one of the things that got me into dentistry. And so having the opportunity as you're older to get back and give back to our profession has been amazing. Or, whatever it is that you have your interest in, again, having that vision, now you start to see, okay, now as I get older, I'm looking at, all right, what can I do with my family to leave legacy? And that's also so important for me is looking at, my kids, I want them to grow up being able to ask very, very powerful questions, because I think the more powerful the questions you ask, the further that takes you in life. And obviously they need to be self-supportive. And just when I can do that, then I feel like, okay, job well done. And that's one of the things I want to make, allow our children to be a responsible human being that's also contributing on this planet in a very, very powerful and effective way.
Right. Well, all of those things are good advice. I agree 100% with everything you said. One thing that I tend to add to younger dentists when I talk to them is it's very easy to dive 100% into doing everything yourself. And when you're a young dentist, you want to be able to do the dental work and run the business and market the practice and hire personnel. And, basically it becomes an obsession where you're trying to control every aspect of your career. And that will work for a while. I think I was one of those people as well, trying to do everything, every case that walks through the door, help every patient, help every employee, do every case. It was kind of an ego thing that I was trying to build this repertoire. And I just don't think that is sustainable in any career. I think that you eventually reach a burnout point where you've grown to the point where you just can't keep your eyes and your mind and your heart on everything at once. And I always tell young dentists that they have to build systems. You have to build a practice that can function pretty well without you. A lot of dentists fall into this trap where they are doing absolutely everything. And if they go down, 100% of their business goes down with it. And it's important to build systems around you that can support you if you get injured or if you get sick or if you need to take time off or if you want to do something else with your time. So that's a piece of advice that I always give younger dentists is don't just focus on doing as many dental cases as you can. And the same thing applies to if you're a chef or if you're an architect or if you're any professional.
Absolutely.
Don't just try to do everything yourself. You have to surround yourself with competent people and surround yourself with systems. And I'm not just talking about business systems. I'm talking about systems in general that can allow you to function in your life and not necessarily have to do everything for everyone. Because I think that can really lead to burnout. And that's what we see for middle-aged dentists on that burnout path. And I think you were probably one of them. Is it fair to say that you were kind of a control freak and wanting to own and operate and control everything in your life? And I just don't think it's possible. And you have to you have to surrender a little bit of that in order to be happy. Is that fair?
I totally agree with that, Ryan. I think that's right on the money there. And having the ability take things that are outside of dentistry. Learn leadership. Take the time to do that because and take great things to learn how to be a more effective communicator. Because you can have, and this was my experience, you can have all of the most amazing skills on the planet, right? And if you can't effectively communicate that to an individual, then you're going to feel like the guy who's all dressed up for prom, ready to go, but no date. You're kind of sitting there on the sidelines like, okay, I'm ready, coach, put me in the game. But if you don't have the ability to communicate that effectively and powerfully and allow people to move through the treatment, then it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to be able to be happy about utilizing your skills in a very, very effective manner.
I want to read you something. I got a text late last night from a young man. I'm just going to read it to you. I'm going to keep it anonymous because
sure.
I think it should be. But let me just read you exactly what he wrote. Hey, Doc, perhaps you have some insight for me. I'm so tired with the current state, and I feel like I'm stuck at a dead end. This is just last night at 11:30 at night. I feel like my skill set is wasted, and I'm stuck doing procedures I don't enjoy for the peanuts that insurance pays out. I'm not able to sit down and spend the amount of time I would like with each patient because I'm stuck playing the volume game. I wish I could just be doing implants, all on X surgical procedures, and although I have the skill set, I just don't have that many patients that are financially able or even those in need of the procedures. And I don't know how to attract these patients to my practice and build a fee-for-service implant practice. So most of my patients are just do what my insurance covers patients, and I'm lucky to get 5 to 6 big cases a year. At this point, I feel like I'm at a dead end, and I don't know what to do. I love the implant and all on X game, and I want to do these cases, but finding this patient is 80% of the battle, and I just can't figure out how to win that battle. My response was, tune in tomorrow. Because this is what we're talking about. We're talking about this is a young guy. He's trying to get his footing. He's probably spent, like you said, oodles of money on CE and learned how to do these procedures. What's your advice to this young man? Aside from come to Florida for this conference.
Yeah, no, that's a given. But the other aspect is you've really got to take, and it sounds like he is starting to really do a big analysis on the practice, and he's coming to the realization of the truth that, when you just deal with a all, insurance-based practice, that's very difficult to build that out of that type of practice. I mean, it's hard to do. It doesn't mean it's impossible to do, but I've just found it to be a much more difficult aspect. The second practice that I built that was a startup practice, I started that practice up and there was a lot of plans in that practice. And then I slowly had to work them out and get to a fee-for-service practice in order to turn that into what I turned it into. And so I would have you start to look at what is a great way that you can start to consider transitioning that to a more fee-for-service practice while still allowing yourself to have the opportunity to make sure you can pay your bills and take care of things and take care of your team and grow the practice. But then it is looking at, now this is exactly what we're talking about, learning how to market, learning different aspects and skills with that.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that you have to be able to build the landing pages and all of that stuff, but you need to be able to communicate the message that you're wanting to do and not just take a cookie cutter effect from any plain old marketing company that's going to throw something at you.
Right.
But you have to start to realize, okay, if I want to practice and have, the ability to attract these train wrecks into my practice, then there's different volumes that we've got to look at learning how to speak, which is a marketing language. Mm-hmm. And what's the difference between advertising and marketing and how does that play in? But really you've done the first step, or he's done the first step, which is waking up to the fact that, hey, if I continue down this road in my PPO or insurance-based practice, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So I've got to start to make the transition. But looking at getting advice along the way, what ones do I cut out first? How do I do that? What's the best way to transition for that? That'd be my first step of advice of looking at that. So you don't, because you can't tank your practice, but you got to look at how can I move that forward. and then taking and saying, okay, what can I add in for some marketing, and realizing that the marketing for this stuff does not just happen overnight.
Right.
It's something that builds. You're going to have to expect a good 3 months of putting stuff out there to start to attract, these types of clients to come into your practice.
Right. I always tell people that if you're stuck in the insurance game, you're never going to really be able to transition to the type of work that we do. The two do not effectively coexist. The PPO and HMO dental market and the implant full arch market are almost at odds. And I tell people, if you're in an office that's heavily PPO dependent, you have, let's say you have 10 or 15 or 20 plans that you're a part of, do an analysis and just look at it in thirds. You have the top third of your insurance plans that pay the top third of your revenue. You have the middle third that pay the middle, and you have the bottom third. Immediately drop the bottom third. Like, everybody listening to this should look at what our insurances they take in terms of percentage of revenue and immediately drop the bottom third of the insurance plans. They're useless to you and they're taking up your time. Make a plan to drop the middle third in about 6 to 12 months.
Yes.
And if you want to preserve the top third, well, you can. I chose not to. I eliminated all plans from my office and I'm strictly out of network. But you can do some work with the top third of your insurance companies, but everybody should drop the bottom third. And then everyone should have a plan to drop the middle third. And if everybody just did that, you would open up your office to all these patients out there that don't have insurance or don't care to use it because they want a higher quality experience. And it opens up your schedule, and you have a little bit of downtime, and your hygienist may be sitting around for a few months, but it picks back up. In general, we're an underserved nation for dental care, and there's so many patients that need this high quality work. If you just open up your schedule and then start a marketing program and attract those people into your practice, they're going to come. But then you've got to be able to serve them. You got to have the skill set and the mindset to be able to capitalize and treat these patients and meet their expectations. And then it just starts to snowball. And you really don't have to put too much energy into it if you're doing high quality work and you have an open enough schedule where you're not bogged down with the mundane 9 to 5 PPO grind. So that would be my advice to him is, you've got to immediately cut the tie. This insurance game is just it's like a drug. It's like a steady paycheck, but you've really got to just cut that out of your life. It will drag you down into the sewer, and it will really take all the joy out of dentistry, unless that's what you enjoy. I can't imagine enjoying that grind. And
I was going to say, I think too, it'd be very interesting for that individual to go in and see how many fee-for-service patients do they actually have.
Right.
And then you can go back and look at something like the Kodak study and look at, what are your fees for your normal fee-for-service, and then what are your fees for your PPOs and HMOs and everything that you're involved with, and how much are you really losing from that perspective? And just like you said, Ryan, phase that out accordingly. When I did that with my second practice, I actually just cut them all out immediately. And for the first 2 months, I did. I was like, cold turkey, here we go.
Yeah.
But first 2 months kind of sucked. But right after that, we were earning more than we had earned before ever. So it took 2 months really for that to flip, because I had started the marketing more, turned that up, and just juiced that. And it worked out really, really well. Now, that practice ended up being a great fee-for-service practice that I sold at the end of this last year. But it was one of those things that it took the guts and the gumption to take and say, I'm going to convert this over. Mm-hmm. My other practice that I've been in has been fee-for-service the whole entire time. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of like just like the tale of two cities right there when you look at it. Right. And it is one of those things, but you're right. I don't think you can effectively be able to exist in that space that you say you want to, if you want to do a lot of full arch, a lot of implants. It's very, very difficult to do that in that insurance-based game.
I agree. So we got a couple more minutes, but there's a few more things I want to ask you. So when you meet these dentists, let's say this young man decides to come to your conference and meet you, and where do you start? Like, well, what do you do with a dentist who is admittedly struggling and admittedly not balanced? What is the initial assessment like?
Well, that's perfect. And that is truly that. Just getting an assessment of finding out exactly where it is that they're at in their life, because it is a co-creative process and response, because everybody's coming in at different things. They've got different things that matter to them and different situations that are unique. So it's looking at finding where is that man truly at, and then how can we focus that so we know where the attention needs to go. We call it looking at, all right, we're going to establish, what is the domino? What is that first domino that when that domino gets kicked over, it's going to start everything else progressing in the right direction. So that's kind of where our high area of focus is going to be, is looking at what's the domino that's going to make the most sense for each one of those individuals out of those 4 areas. Does that make sense, Ryan?
Yeah. Kind of take a lay of the land on all those F's that you were talking about.
Absolutely. And like I said, find out, do we have the flat tire or is the whole car up on the brick? What do we have?
On cinder blocks.
Yes.
Okay. So these guys, these docs take an assessment and they find out that they are, let's say, mildly deficient in 3 categories and seriously deficient in a 4th. What happens then?
So then what we do is we start to look at, all right, starting to unveil the tools. And after the assessment, what they're able to see then is the first step is really just getting real with yourself of exactly where you're at and being able to tell yourself the truth and look in the mirror and say, okay, this is where I'm at. This is my true reality. Once I'm able to do that, now I also then can start to look at, okay, where do I want to go? Okay. And then you ask yourself, okay, this is where I want to go, and you get really clear on that. So once we know where I'm at, where I want to go, in between therein lies the gap.
Right.
And in between that gap, that's what we start to then look at building on. And that's where everything then starts to come into play. So once we know that, it has to be, first of all, where am I at? Get real with that. And then where do I want to go? Because if we don't know where somebody wants to go, what is their vision? What is their purpose? We don't know that. There's no way that we can coach anybody on what they want to do. Okay. Otherwise, that's just kind of unsolicited advice.
So they had the assessment. They can make a plan, right? And then, so you go to Florida. You have an amazing weekend. You open up a lot of doors in your mind, and you learn a lot. But then, what's the follow through? Like, where do you guys? So the cool thing is,
that's awesome. So the cool thing is that every man that leaves there will leave with a 90-day target, very clear in each one of those domains. So they'll have a 90-day target in their faith. They'll have a 90-day target in their fitness, one in their finance, and one with their family. Okay. So they know exactly over the next 90 days where their area of focus will be. They'll also know this is my domino, my main area of focus. And then they'll also have the opportunity, if they want to DIY it, absolutely. They've got some great information to get going and really have an opportunity to start crushing it in 2023. If they want to join part of the community, then they've got an opportunity to run with their brothers through the community. And what that does is it really gives them the ability to collapse time and move forward with a powerful group. So they'll have that invitation and opportunity to join the group at that time as well.
Awesome. So for people who want to learn more, people who want to sign up, tell us the best way to get in touch with you, the best way to find out more, and anything else you want to add.
Yeah, perfect. You can check us out at Be The Man Con, BE The Man Con, CON.com. Okay. That's an easy way to just check out what's available. We can put that in one of the show notes here too, Ryan, and put the link up.
Yeah, we will.
And then I'll also drop
right here now.
Yeah. And then we'll drop that in too. And then the other best way is just find me on Messenger. You can find me on Messenger, Jeff Buske there, or you can also find me on LinkedIn. You can reach me there at Jeffrey Buske. That's easy ways to get in contact with me. So reach out to me there if you've got any questions. One of the special things that I want to do for members of the fam and put that out there is for really over the course of the next week here, we're going to give away some golden tickets. And what that means, you kind of think of Willy Wonka, right?
Yeah,
like with the golden ticket in the chocolate factory. But one of the cool things is we've had some amazing sponsors that have really stepped up and believed in what it is that we're doing.
Okay.
And so they've made it very, very easy where we can come in. And so what we're going to do, the golden ticket is going to go away after the next week. But if you say, I want to come to the conference, a golden ticket will give you free tuition to come to the 3-day event. You just got to get your butt there. Okay. You got to take care of your flight, take care of your hotel, your food, but you get yourself there, and then your tuition will be comped for those 3 days. So there's not really a whole lot to lose other than if you've got something going on, got to make sure you make a choice on, hey, if this is important to me in my life, then I'm making the decision to go.
And again, just take a minute and just remind everybody that the purpose of this is not to exclude anybody, even though it's a conference for men, but just talk about how it's not really an exclusionary group.
This is a conference, you're exactly right, that is set up for men. And because for me, it's creating the foundation. And it is about having the opportunity, by the end of the conference, men will have the opportunity to leave being a better husband, a better father, and a better leader in their life. Mm-hmm. And it's been my experience in the past that if we can do that, then we show up a lot better at home. And also, too, men need a space in order to be a little bit more vulnerable, because we are going to be talking about things that we're dealing with as men and as issues in our industry and in our life and in the way that we operate as general. Right. And when we can do that in a safe space, men can make progress very quickly. This also means that later on, we'll be able to add in and work with, we do have other programs that are both a co-ed program when men and women, dentists, are welcome to be there, learning simultaneously. But it's been our experience in the past that the men need a little jump start, so to speak, and the ability to get in there and get a little work ahead of time. And then it's easy. Then now you can go, hand in hand with the women, and it's a lot better to work that way. And I think, the other great thing that's tremendous too is that, we have some amazing just women's conferences as well. And I think that's an important factor too, right, for them to be able to experience some things. My good friend, Ann Duffy, she's got a great conference, I think, happening right at the same time. That's Do Life, a Dental Entrepreneurial Women. And that's an amazing women's conference. So I think there is some greatness about having something that is separate, but it's something that's not segregated to hold women back or to hold women down. Right. I love women, and I want to see them propagate and really exceptionally soar in our profession. And that's one of the things that, by approaching things this way, I really feel like we can get the best value. But it does. It starts with the men for me.
Well, that is your passion, and you should absolutely follow it. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. You're a colleague and a friend, and I consider you like a brother. So I appreciate you very, very much for coming on the FAM podcast. I was expecting a great conversation, and we had it. And I'm honored that you were our first guest. And I hope you enjoyed it. And any closing thoughts?
Yes. And I did want to say thank you to you and appreciate what you've done and what you've created, because you've done exactly what it is some of that we're talking about. You've created a powerful community, and in a community where it is safe to learn. Mm-hmm. I love the fact when, you throw up, hey, here's failures that I've had, or here's where things went south, or here's where things, because it's not about just like you experience on Facebook, where you're having just all the, Instagram, where it's just all the perfect things. No, this is a true ability to learn. Yeah. And that's exactly the way that communities that are really set out to make a difference are. So I want to acknowledge you for that, because that's what you've built. And that's what we're wanting to do with what we're doing in our space as well. The last things that I would say is, we talk about a lot of serious things and a lot of serious dynamics in life, but the reality is that it's got to be fun. And so just go and enjoy part of life, and make sure you take the time to schedule fun. Make sure you put that into your calendar, and just make sure you absorb that, because otherwise it is too easy to burn out. Right. And it's too easy to let the stress and overwhelm bring you down. Right. Part of my vision is to really look at putting a dent in, the sedation, the suicide, the depression, and the divorce in our industry. Right. If I can do that by the time I walk away from dentistry, or I'm no longer on this planet, then I'll really feel like I've given something back to our profession. So that's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing.
And I feel the same way about analog full arch workflows.
Exactly.
Let's get rid of it.
Let's get rid of it. Thank you, Ryan. Right, it was a pleasure.
I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Full Arch Masters podcast. I want to thank Dr. Jeff Buske for tuning in and joining me for this Season 1, Episode 1 of our FAM podcast. Stay tuned for more episodes. They're going to be coming out regularly with doctors and industry professionals from around the dental field. Again, thank you and have a wonderful weekend.